Rillo had spent 14 years picking through the bones of dead ships, but she had never seen metal that sang. The human vessel drifted in the darkness of rim space, a massive cylinder torn open by some ancient catastrophe. Her salvage crew had marked it as low priority months ago. Human wrecks rarely contained anything valuable. Their technology was crude, their materials cheap, their designs primitive. Most crews ignored them entirely. But Rillo was young and curious, and the wreck was on her route home. She floated through the shattered corridors with her scanning equipment, cataloging debris that nobody would want to buy. Plastic containers, paper documents that crumbled at her touch. Strange fabric clothing designed for beings with only 4 limbs. Everything was old. Everything was worthless. Then she found the leather pouch. It was tucked into a small compartment near what must have been sleeping quarters. The leather had hardened over centuries of vacuum exposure, but the stitching held firm. Rillo pried it open with her secondary arms and pulled out the object inside. A folding tool of some kind, metal and wood and something that looked like glass. She turned it over in her hands, trying to understand its purpose. One section unfolded into a blade. Another revealed a small disc with a floating needle. A third held a rough red surface and a striking pad. The glass portion was circular and highly polished. Rillo ran her scanner over it and frowned at the readings. The blade was made from an alloy her equipment couldn't identify. The scanner simply displayed error messages and confused symbols. She tried again with the same result. She pressed a small button on the side of the tool and jumped as it began to emit a sharp, pulsing sound. A red light blinked in rhythm with the noise. She pressed the button again and the sound stopped. Curious but cautious, Rillo tucked the tool back into its pouch and continued her survey. 2 hours later, she returned to her ship with a cargo hold full of scrap and one small leather bundle that seemed far more interesting than anything else she had found. Her captain, a seasoned Pelian named Das, examined the tool in his quarters while Rillo watched nervously. He unfolded the blade and tested its edge against his thumb. A thin line of purple blood appeared immediately. Das stared at the cut. He had scales, thick ones. They could withstand plasma burns and chemical exposure. No ordinary blade should have been able to pierce them so easily. He set the tool down very carefully. "Where exactly did you find this?" he asked. Rillo told him. Das listened without interruption, his eyes never leaving the folded blade. When she finished, he reached for his security case. This was a small box made from reinforced composite materials designed to protect valuable cargo from fire, radiation, and forced entry. It was rated to survive starship crashes. Das placed the tool inside and closed the lid. Then he picked up the blade again and drew it along the surface of the case. The metal parted like water. A clean line appeared in the composite, perfectly straight, without resistance or sound. Das could see through to the padding inside. He set the blade down again. His hands were shaking. "This goes to the Coalition," he said quietly. "They need to see this." Rillo nodded, still not fully understanding why her captain seemed so disturbed. It was just a knife. Humans used them for cutting food and opening packages. She had read about such things in cultural databases, primitive tools for a primitive species. But Das knew something she didn't. He had spent decades salvaging across the galaxy. He had handled weapons from 100 civilizations. He had seen laser cutters and plasma torches and molecular disassemblers. None of them scared him. This scared him. A simple folding knife from a dead human ship, at least 200 years old, still sharp enough to slice through materials that should have been impenetrable. And the humans considered this a basic tool. Something they carried in their pockets, something they gave to their young. What else did they have? The salvage ship changed course toward the central cluster. Behind them, the human wreck continued its slow drift through the darkness, holding secrets that nobody had thought to look for until now. Somewhere in the void, the emergency beacon's signal traveled outward at the speed of light. It had only been active for a few seconds, but that was enough. 3 systems away, A Dominion listening post recorded the transmission and flagged it for review. A human distress frequency, standard pattern, nothing unusual. The duty officer almost deleted it. Human signals were common debris, echoes of their failed expansion into the stars. But something made him pause. The signal was clean, too clean for equipment that old. He forwarded it to intelligence with a note suggesting further investigation. He would never know how much that small decision would change. For now, the knife sat in its damaged case aboard a salvage ship, waiting to be studied. An ancient tool from a dead world, carrying the weight of secrets its creators had never intended to share. The galaxy was about to learn what humans considered ordinary. The package arrived at the Coalition Science Hub, wrapped in 7 layers of containment material. Chief Analyst Dissa found this excessive. She had requested a simple artifact examination, not a hazardous materials delivery. But the salvage captain had been insistent. Special handling, maximum security, no standard protocols. She unwrapped the layers one by one until she reached the damaged security case. The cut along its surface was precise and smooth. Whoever had made it possessed either extremely advanced equipment or extremely steady hands. Inside, she found a leather pouch and a brief note from Captain Doss explaining where and how the object had been discovered. Dissa read the note twice, then set it aside and opened the pouch. The tool fit easily in her hand. It was heavier than she expected, with a solid construction that spoke of durability rather than elegance. She unfolded the blade and examined it under magnification. No visible imperfections, no signs of wear despite centuries of age. The edge caught the light in a way that suggested molecular-level sharpness. Dissa had seen similar characteristics in cutting tools manufactured by the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Those tools cost millions and required constant maintenance. This was a pocket knife. She began her analysis with standard spectroscopy. The results made her check her equipment 3 times before accepting them. The blade contained iron, carbon, chromium, and several elements she couldn't identify. The molecular structure was layered and complex, unlike anything in her databases. The wood handle was equally strange. It had been treated with some kind of preservative that prevented decay even in vacuum conditions. 200 years of exposure and it still felt smooth and solid. Dissa moved to the fire starting component, a rough red strip and a small striking surface. She had read about primitive combustion methods in anthropological texts, friction and chemical reaction, simple technology from simple minds. She struck the surface and a shower of sparks erupted. The temperature readings made her step back. Those tiny sparks burned at levels hot enough to melt standard hull plating. The chemical compound that produced them should have degraded centuries ago, but it remained fully functional. Humans carried this in their pockets. They used it to start cooking fires. The compass came next, a floating needle under a clear cover responding to magnetic fields. Dissa watched it spin and settle, then noticed something odd. It wasn't pointing toward the station's magnetic north. It was pointing toward her equipment rack, specifically toward the section containing refined iron samples. The compass detected metal, not just magnetic poles, metal. She spent 3 hours examining the small mirror. It wasn't glass. It wasn't crystal. She couldn't scratch it, couldn't damage it, couldn't affect it in any way. It reflected light with almost perfect efficiency, including wavelengths that should have passed straight through. Her analysis of the reflection coefficient made her sit down heavily. The mirror would reflect weapon fire, laser weapons, plasma discharges, anything in the light spectrum, a palm-sized surface that could serve as an emergency defense against directed energy attacks. Dissa compiled her preliminary findings into a report. She read it over and felt cold. This single tool, this basic piece of human equipment, contained technology that matched or exceeded the best the Coalition could produce. And it was old, primitive by human standards, a relic from their early space exploration era. What were they using now? She looked at the knife sitting on her examination table. Such a small thing, such enormous implications. Coalition leadership would want this classified. They would want to bury the findings, contain the information, prevent panic. Dessau understood the reasoning. She even agreed with it on some level. But she also believed that the galaxy needed to know. She encrypted her report and sent it to the Galactic Council through back channels that shouldn't have existed. Then she locked the tool in her most secure vault and waited for the response. It came faster than expected. Within hours, Coalition security arrived at her laboratory with orders to secure all findings and detain anyone with knowledge of the project. Dessau cooperated calmly. She had expected this. What she hadn't expected was the news that followed. Her report had leaked. Before it could be contained, someone on the council had shared it with allies, who shared it with others, who shared it with everyone. The galaxy was asking questions. The galaxy was afraid. And somewhere in the archives of 100 intelligence agencies, analysts were pulling every scrap of data they had on human technology. They were reading about flashlights and vehicles and medicine and construction tools. They were learning what Earth had made its children capable of. The examination was over. The analysis was complete. Now came the panic. The council chamber erupted into chaos within minutes of the session opening. Representatives from 47 species shouted over each other, demanding explanations, demanding action, demanding anything that might restore their sense of safety. The speakers' calls for order went unheard. The security teams along the walls shifted nervously, unsure whether to intervene. In the public gallery above the chamber floor, a young human woman named Paula Webb watched the madness unfold with growing confusion. She was a junior diplomatic attaché sent to observe council proceedings as part of her training. Nobody important, nobody with authority, just a recent graduate trying to learn how galactic politics worked. She was learning plenty today. The leaked report had spread across every news network in the galaxy overnight. Analysts were dissecting each finding, adding their own speculation, building theories about human military capabilities that would have been funny if anyone had been laughing. A Velian representative was currently explaining that human flashlights output enough light to cause permanent blindness in most species. A Korathi delegate countered that human vehicles could survive impacts that would destroy military transports. Someone else mentioned that human children learned to use fire before they learned to read. Paula frowned. That last part wasn't even accurate. Most children learned to read around the same time. She should know she had been one of them. Below, a Dominion admiral named Reki stepped forward to address the chamber. He was a tall figure in dark military dress, his voice calm and measured despite the panic around him. "We have been complacent," he said. "We assumed that because humans were new to space travel, they posed no significant threat. We were wrong." The chamber quieted slightly, drawn by his confidence. "The artifact analysis proves that human survival technology exceeds our most optimistic projections. Their basic tools function as weapons. Their children receive training that our special forces would struggle to complete. Their species evolved on a world so hostile that everything they create is designed to kill or prevent being killed." Paula shifted uncomfortably in her seat. That wasn't how she would describe a camping trip. "I propose," Rekis continued, "that we consider preemptive action before humans realize the advantage they possess, before they begin exporting their technology, before they decide that the galaxy would be easier to survive without us in it." The chamber exploded again, this time split between those supporting the proposal and those horrified by it. Paula watched representatives she had studied in school argue about whether her species should be attacked, contained, or destroyed. She pulled out her phone to text her supervisor. Whatever was happening here, someone with actual authority needed to know about it. Half the chamber dove for cover. Paula froze with her phone in her hand as security teams rushed toward the gallery, weapons drawn. Representatives screamed warnings about human devices and unknown capabilities and immediate threats. She looked down at her phone, then she looked at the chaos below, then she looked at her phone again. "It's just a phone," she said, but nobody was listening. Security surrounded her within seconds. They kept their distance, treating her like an explosive that might detonate at any moment. One of them demanded she drop the device. Another ordered her to put her hands up. A third was already calling for hazardous materials containment. Paula set her phone on the seat beside her, very slowly, and raised her hands. "It's a communication device," she said clearly, "for talking and sending messages and taking pictures." "Pictures?" one of the officers repeated, sounding terrified. "Yes, pictures of things like food or friends or interesting buildings." Paula was struggling to understand what was frightening about this. "It also plays music and has a calculator." The security team exchanged looks. One of them was typing rapidly into his own device, cross-referencing her claims with intelligence databases. "She's telling the truth," he reported. "Human communication devices serve multiple functions including visual recording, audio playback, mathematical, computation, and illumination." "Illumination?" another officer asked. "Flashlight," Paula said helpfully, "for when it's dark." The security team backed up another step. Below, the council session had completely collapsed. Representatives were fleeing to secure rooms or clustering in species groups for protection. Admiral Reckies watched the chaos with satisfaction. He had made his point. Paula stayed in her seat with her hands raised, surrounded by armed officers who seemed genuinely afraid of a device she had owned since she was 12 years old. She was beginning to understand why humanity hadn't been invited to many galactic functions. She was beginning to understand quite a lot of things. They kept Paula in a holding cell for 3 days. The cell was comfortable enough, climate-controlled, adequately furnished, with regular meals delivered by automated systems. But she wasn't allowed her phone, her bag, or any of the items she had been carrying when security detained her. On the 4th day, a delegation of officials arrived to interview her. They introduced themselves as representatives from the Galactic Security Council, a special committee assembled to assess the human threat. Paula noted that they stayed on the opposite side of a reinforced barrier, speaking to her through a translation system rather than approaching directly. "We would like you to explain the devices you were carrying," the lead official said. His name was something she couldn't pronounce, so she thought of him as Gray because of his coloring. Paula shrugged. "Sure, can I have my stuff back?" The officials exchanged uncertain looks. Eventually, Gray nodded, and an automated cart delivered Paula's confiscated belongings through a security hatch. She picked up her phone first, showing it to the cameras she knew were recording everything. "This is a phone, personal communication device. Humans carry these from about age 10 or 11, sometimes younger." "You arm your children with these?" another official asked, sounding horrified. Paula blinked. "They're not weapons, look." She opened an app and showed them a picture of her dog. "See, that's Max, he's a good boy." The officials studied the image with obvious confusion. One of them made a note about human companion animals and potential tactical applications. Paula decided to move on. She pulled her bag toward her and began removing items one at a time. A small first aid kit. Flashlight, a multi-tool similar to the one that had apparently started this entire panic. A water bottle, sunglasses. Gray stopped her at the first aid kit. "Explain each component." Paula opened the kit and held up a small tube. "Antibiotic cream for cuts and scrapes, prevents infection." "Biological warfare compounds," someone muttered. "What? No, it helps wounds heal." She held up a roll of bandages. "These wrap around injuries to stop bleeding and keep them clean." "Flexible armor material." Paula stared at them. "It's cotton, fabric, it tears if you pull hard enough." She spent 2 hours explaining band-aids, pain relievers, antiseptic wipes, and tweezers. By the end, The officials looked more confused than when they had started. They kept expecting weapons and finding medicine. They kept expecting threats and finding tools designed to help. The flashlight caused an evacuation alarm when Paula turned it on. The multi-tool made 3 officials physically leave the room. The sunglasses prompted a lengthy discussion about optical defense systems. Paula answered every question patiently. She explained that humans carried these things because Earth was dangerous. Sunlight could burn skin. Cuts could become infected. Darkness made it hard to see. Water from unknown sources might contain harmful bacteria. "Your planet is trying to kill you," Gray summarized. "Pretty much constantly," Paula agreed. "So we make tools to stay alive. That's all any of this is, survival equipment." "Your survival equipment cuts through starship hulls." Paula considered this. "Does it? I mean knives are for cutting. I guess if the hull is made of something soft enough to cut." She trailed off as she realized the implications. Humans had been making knives for thousands of years. They kept making them sharper, stronger, more durable. It had never occurred to anyone that they might be creating something dangerous to other species. They were just making better tools. "We didn't know," she said quietly. "We really didn't know." Gray studied her for a long moment. "Know what?" "That were scary." Paula looked at her pile of ordinary belongings, seeing them differently now. "We just thought we were normal." The interview continued for another 3 hours. By the end, Paula had explained human camping, human medicine, human education, and human attitudes toward personal safety. The officials had filled countless reports with information that would reshape galactic understanding of humanity. When they finally released her, Gray stopped her at the door. "Your ambassador has been contacted," he said. "She's coming here." Paula nodded. "Good, someone needs to explain this properly." "Can you explain it?" She thought about growing up on Earth, learning to swim because drowning was common, learning first aid because accidents happened, learning to use tools because the alternative was helplessness. "We're not monsters," she said finally. "We're just survivors." Gray didn't respond, but something in his expression suggested he was beginning to understand. Ambassador Rachel Okonkwo arrived at the Galactic Council with a small delegation and one unusual piece of cargo. She was a tall woman with gray streaks in her dark hair and a calm presence that seemed unaffected by the tension surrounding her. Security teams tracked her every movement. Officials kept their distance. Representatives watched from protected viewing areas as if she might attack at any moment. Rachel had dealt with difficult diplomatic situations before. This was the first time she had been treated like an unexploded bomb. The council had convened in special session to address what they were calling the human crisis. Representatives from every major species were present, along with military advisors, scientific consultants, and intelligence officers. The chamber was packed and silent as Rachel approached the speaking platform. She set her cargo on the podium, a small book with a colorful cover worn from use. "This is a gift," she said clearly. "A human children's survival manual. It teaches young humans how to survive in wilderness environments." The translator systems carried her words to every corner of the chamber. Nobody moved. Rachel opened the book and began paging through it, describing each section. Building shelters from natural materials, starting fires without modern equipment, purifying water using simple filtration, finding food in unfamiliar environments, signaling for rescue using mirrors and smoke. "Human children learn these skills before they become teenagers," she explained. "We consider this basic education, preparation for emergencies that might never happen but could be deadly if they do." A Pelian representative raised a hand. "You train your young as soldiers." "We train them as survivors." Rachel closed the book and looked out at the assembled. "Species, Earth is what your scientists classify as a Category 12 death world. Our gravity is crushing. Our weather is violent. Our wildlife includes predators that can kill with a single bite. Our plants produce toxins. Our water carries disease. Our very sun causes cancer with prolonged exposure. She paused to let this sink in. Every piece of human technology exists because the alternative was death. Our knives are sharp because blunt knives are dangerous. Our flashlights are bright because darkness hides predators. Our medicine is powerful because our diseases are aggressive. We didn't design these things to threaten anyone. We designed them to survive another day. Admiral Rekis stood from his position near the military delegation. The ambassador speaks of survival, but the facts speak of capability. Human technology poses a clear threat to galactic security regardless of original intent. Rachel nodded. You're right, we are dangerous, I won't pretend otherwise. The chamber shifted uneasily at this admission. But being dangerous is not the same as being destructive. Rachel reached into her pocket and pulled out her own phone, holding it up for the assembly to see. This device could blind any species in this room if I activated its flashlight at full power. I've never done that, never even considered it. She set the phone on the podium beside the book. Humans have possessed nuclear weapons for over 300 years, weapons capable of destroying entire cities in seconds. We've never used them on anyone beyond our own planet, and even then only twice in our entire history. We have the capability to cause mass destruction, and we choose, every single day, not to use it. Rekis started to respond, but Rachel continued. You want to know what humans are really like? Look at that knife you found. It was carried by someone on a generation ship trying to find a new home among the stars. When their ship failed, when everything went wrong, they died holding a tool designed to keep them alive. Not a weapon of conquest, a symbol of hope. She gathered her book and phone and stepped back from the podium. You can fear us, you can attack us, you can try to contain us, but I would suggest a different approach. Learn from us, work with us. Let us teach you how to survive the universe the same way we taught ourselves to survive Earth. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly, representative from one of the moderate factions rose to speak in favor of continued dialogue. The debate lasted for hours. Arguments flew back and forth about security concerns and diplomatic opportunities. But something had shifted. The raw terror was fading, replaced by something more complex. Curiosity, possibility, maybe even hope. Rachel watched from her seat as the galaxy began to reconsider what humanity might mean for them. Not a threat to be eliminated, perhaps a partner to be understood. 1 year had passed since the human technology crisis began. Rillo still remembered the day she found the knife. She thought about it often as she traveled between systems, teaching others how to use the tools that had caused so much fear and confusion. Her job title was officially Human Technology Consultant. Unofficially, people called her the Bridge. She helped aliens understand what humans considered ordinary, and she helped humans understand why their ordinary scared everyone else. Today, she was on a mining station in the outer systems, demonstrating proper knife handling to a group of Pelian workers. They watched with nervous attention as she unfolded the blade and showed them the correct grip. Cutting motion goes away from your body, she explained. Always know where your fingers are, always know where the blade is going. A young worker raised his hand. Is it true humans give these to children? Rillo smiled. They do. My human partner gave one to her nephew last month. He was very excited. The workers exchanged uncertain looks, still not entirely comfortable with the idea. But they were learning. Slowly, carefully, they were learning. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out in 100 different contexts. Search and rescue teams now carried human flashlights, capable of illuminating collapsed structures and dark caves better than any previous equipment. Medical stations stocked human antiseptics and bandages, finally able to treat injuries that had been difficult to manage before. Emergency shelters included human fire starters and water purification tablets. The technology that had seemed so threatening was saving lives. Paula Webb had become something of a celebrity. Her testimony during the crisis had humanized her species in ways that official diplomats never could. She now traveled between systems as a cultural ambassador, giving lectures and answering questions about Earth. Yes, we really do swim for fun, she was explaining to an audience of young students. The water on Earth can be quite pleasant if the temperature is right. But water contains bacteria, a student protested. That's why we learn to keep our mouths closed, Paula grinned, and we have very good immune systems. The students made notes about human biology and environmental resistance. Ambassador Okonkwo had returned to Earth, but kept in regular contact with galactic leaders. She was currently negotiating a technology exchange program that would give humans access to faster-than-light communication in exchange for sharing their material science advances. The knife alloy, it turned out, had applications far beyond cutting. Engineers were adapting it for medical tools, construction equipment, and protective gear. Human metallurgy was becoming the foundation for entirely new industries. Admiral Rekis remained skeptical, but had grudgingly accepted a liaison position with the human diplomatic corps. He still believed humanity posed a potential threat. But he was learning, like everyone else, that potential and action were different things. Chief Analyst Dissa had been quietly promoted and given resources to study human technology systematically. Her lab was producing breakthrough after breakthrough as they reverse-engineered centuries of Earth engineering. She kept the original knife in a display case near her desk, a reminder of where everything had started. And somewhere in the outer systems, a mixed crew of humans and aliens huddled together on a harsh and frozen planet. Their ship had crashed 3 days ago. Rescue was still 2 days away. Their supplies were running low and temperatures were dropping. The human crew member, a young woman named Sarah, pulled a survival knife from her belt and began giving instructions. "We need shelter first," she said. "Then fire, then we figure out water." The aliens watched as she cut branches from the twisted local vegetation, showing them how to weave the pieces together into a windbreak. She demonstrated the fire starter, producing sparks that caught on dried moss. She explained how to melt ice safely and check it for contamination. By nightfall, they had a functioning camp. By morning, they had a routine. By the time rescue arrived, they had become something like friends. The rescue team found them sitting around a small fire, sharing stories and trying to stay warm. Sarah was teaching a Velian the proper way to hold a knife. The Velian was teaching her songs from his homeworld. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was a beginning. The blade that cut through starship hulls turned out to be the same blade that carved a place for understanding. Human technology had become the galaxy's greatest teacher.